So today we have like I guess the mind behind most of the things in the chase tag world, Mr. Amos. Welcome.
Gentlemen, thanks for having me.
Maybe we could actually do the whole podcast in French, because for the people that don't know, Amos is able to speak in French.
S'il vous plaît, mon cerveau est trop fatigué.
The first time he actually did speak in French to me, I was really surprised. But anyway, so...
Yeah, before we start, it's maybe time for me to pay my dues, because like before coming here, I told you I would bring you something if you came on the podcast. So I just have it here.
What? You guys are too nice. When I met you, you're talking all this shit.
Plus some Côte du Rhône.
Oh man, Côte du Rhône. That is so nice of you, man. I appreciate you. We can't crack this open right now, though.
We're gonna find it at the bar. We just
don't French people just.
No. So yeah.
Cool, thanks, man.
That was the gift.
I appreciate you.
From French to an American.
Oh, thank you, man. Thank you.
To be honest, I didn't know about that, so you don't have to.
I take that back. Yeah.
So yeah, I have many questions. First one is, we're recording this after the Panamerican Championship, so we know the results.
Just after.
Yeah.
I'm exhausted and beaten up right now.
And we didn't eat.
And yes, I do need to eat. But I am so content and happy in that. So yeah, it was a good event.
How do you feel about your integration into Hollywood Freerunners as a new team, moving from Apex to?
I really appreciate those guys. They've been so kind and open, and they really want it. And so their ears are always perked up. And actually, I'm really impressed with them, because with such little quad time, I mean, these guys have only had 45 minutes before the first 3 events they did. And I didn't even get that much time with them before this last event, just because of stuntmen working schedules and such. And with the little time we had, their ability to digest some of my approaches, and then also so quickly innovate on top of it. Kyle, I think it was day 2, was innovating on top of what I had taught him, and I was just like, yep, that's how I'm doing that now. I was super impressed. So it's been super smooth. Paul is an old friend of mine, so yeah, I love those guys.
In the event that you get to the World Championship, do you think by then, it's supposed to be probably in October 2023, do you think by then...
that I can still do this stuff?
You can still do this stuff, you'll be over 40.
That's the question, yeah.
No, but like Hollywood will have what it takes to become world champions.
Yeah, I think with the right amount of time, that if we can get these guys on a quad, I'm absolutely certain that is more than a probability.
Okay. Yeah, I think everyone on Hollywood is like absolute unit. Like
they're hungry too.
They're hungry. They want it. They're very competitive. But as you said, will they have the time to go to a quad and train on it? That may be the deciding
tricky
factor.
Part. Yeah. Because I mean, you can know strategies as much as you want. Like some of the new teams, for example, they're just watching all these videos. Maybe they have someone telling them some stuff. But when you're in the moment, the chaos that can happen out there, even vets who have certain continuums just polished, it can throw you off your game with the cameras in the crowd. And so I think that's the sign of a true competitor, someone who is putting that work and also has the psychological prep to hit those continuums that they have prepped without misstepping or letting other players pull them out of their game. So that's the key, and that's the hard part for a lot of people, is to get quads up. So we're gonna try to find out what the hell is going on in France. What are you guys doing with that?
Yeah. Are you more worried about like currently like the French or European teams or the US teams? Like we've seen the US teams like at the USA tournament and right now the Panamerican tournament.
Yeah.
They're playing like 100%. That's maybe one thing, like maybe the French teams don't play that hard, but they have so much more quad IQ, quad time on the quad. Do you think that's going to be an issue at some point for like the US teams going into the Worlds, or are you confident in like...
Yeah, absolutely. I think the French have done a great, I mean, it's you guys. I'm sure that they owe a lot of that to you. All the regular events, all the quads set up in France, and I see little bits here and there. I don't know how much is being hidden, because I mean that's what we did. Like, I mean, I don't know if many people know this. It's probably safe to say these things now. We put out like disinformation videos targeting you guys, just so you know. There were times in the backyard where I got Seth and Jason together, and we built routes that were all the wrong things I don't want to see them doing, and did it as fast as possible. And then right before the US comp, I put a little clip out, and I just like, these guys are getting fast. I guess we're close to the comp, so we can like put this out
people
there.
People won't have time to catch up to this.
Yeah. And so, you know, we were very secretive. I'm so glad where we're at now. Like once we accomplished the mission, undefeated world champions with not one but two teams. After that, it was more like, let's play for the love. Let's play for fun. Let's not be as secretive, because we really were. Like, we didn't let anybody watch anything. We had rules, like we couldn't train with other teams. And, you know, I wanted to be a servant leader. And so even though I felt like it was really intense to go that far, I knew how bad some players wanted it. And so that was me representing the interests of the group. And so I know, like, at first, 2020, 2021, a lot of American teams, they're talking some shit, like they thought we were going too far. Yeah. But I think now with what we did at Worlds, they get it. And I see that potentially the French are doing that too.
Some French teams were actually doing this, like Blacklist or...
Yeah, and that's what's so cool is even though it seems so limited and finite because the quad remains similar, this comp just showed that no, there's so much to be done. Every once in a while I get a glimpse of the future of this sport and it just blows my mind. Like, I'm not gonna be able to do this stuff, but it's gonna get gnarly. And so I'm sure the French have some really cool things they're doing. That's what's so cool about Worlds. Worlds is like, you know, the Chinese, for example, we were just talking about this. I have never seen a single clip of the Chinese. It kind of like excites me that they're just this black box, and then when they show up to Worlds, their strategy is just going to clash with ours.
They have kind of the same. They're like the team that won the Chinese championship, just won 3 times in a row. It's like the last 3 years, the same team won it.
Okay.
That's strong.
Yeah, actually, at first, this is interesting because Damien may have like created a completely different branch of reality. In 2020, because I like nerded out really hard. I crunched a bunch of the data, and I had looked for certain patterns that maybe weren't so apparent. And that's how I designed our original strategy, at least the foundation. I should say, like, the Apex guys, a lot of people speak too kindly of me. Like, the Apex guys have innovated so much onto what I brought to the table. For example, like, Rob brought in Stinky Leg, which is one of my favorite things to do. Jason brought in this, like, we call it the Charmer at the cube, which hasn't even been seen that much yet. Like, Michael Sliger really evolved our Tiger, which is another trap. So yeah, I just want to say that first, but early on when I had started to nerd out and like almost see this like chess and poker and data crunch, all this stuff, in that time, after 2020, I didn't really have like a long-term vision. And I just thought it would be funny and also interesting for Damien and Christian because they built this thing. I just wanted them to kind of get a little peek of what's going on. And so I just said, hey guys, check this out. And I just cracked open my laptop and showed them some of like the graphs and charts and stuff that I was doing to kind of find out some patterns I wouldn't have found otherwise. And I remember the look on Damien's face. He was just so happy that I had taken it that far. And I told him I kind of wanted to pull like an Elon Musk Tesla, like just release the blueprints. I want to see the level of the league rise. And I don't want to just blow people out. And he said to me at that moment, he said, no, don't do that. I want you to keep this close to your chest, because one of the coolest things about the sport is when everyone develops these siloed strategies and then they clash. That's actually one of the cool things. And I respected that, and I said, cool, all right, we'll do that.
That's exactly how I would feel. It's like, I feel like when you were training some people or giving some treats to some people in Woodstock, because we did spend some time around there, in the way people were playing, I could see a lot of things that were coming from you. And I was like, oh, sometimes it's, you know, it would be interesting to actually have people training, you know, in their own environment without being influenced by this, because they could come with new ideas that maybe you didn't think about it.
Yeah, you almost box them in just by teaching them something. And that's why I like having like a contrarian on the team. That's why I like to watch new people that are really fast, like Shane this year.
Yeah, he was very
Michael.
surprising.
Yeah, I'm watching them closely. Yeah,
for
absolutely. For a new team, that's one of the best first showing up, like so strong. But
and that's also why I'm so curious about Worlds, is that, as you said, in France right now we have a lot of, you know, quads and competitions and all of this, and I'm like, I don't know, I don't know what will happen in Worlds. Like, people have been training on their own thing. In the US, they're doing their own thing, and when everyone will clash, like,
I feel like the main difference, even like France, for example, we have events, two events per month or something since like since Worlds. So maybe some teams are not training that hard compared to, like, they spend time on the quad and they have lots of opportunity to train and have competitions and play against different teams. So that's helping them, but that's kind of, it doesn't push them to do that extra work that some American teams are maybe doing, because they have to catch up on not having a quad or something.
Right.
So it's kind of like the Chinese, they're an amazing, strong team, but once they get out of China, they may get wrecked, or they may like shine. Like we have no idea what's going to happen.
That's what makes it so exciting, man.
That's great.
I think Worlds is going to be great this year.
Do you think, like, when you came back to like 2020, like some teams were thinking maybe you were pushing too hard or something for like getting
just
ready
being
for
like too secretive, like it's funny now because it's silly. It's like you guys are trying too hard. Like
but like, do you think maybe at that time, maybe in the US, you are like one of the only teams to understand the potential of it, and people were just like, oh, it's just like another parkour comp, or it's just like something, and we're just gonna have like we're good tracers or something. And they didn't really realize like the whole potential of the sport. And
I don't know if I can speak to that, because I know there were a lot of teams hungry for it, and I was worried at one point, like probably 2021, when like the US comp, we wanted to go to Worlds, and the US comp was almost like collateral damage. It's like, okay, this is what we have to win this thing to get into Worlds. And I was kind of worried about, like, because we did work hard for it, and all those guys just like, they sacrificed a lot, they showed up, they put in the work. And I mean, we had contingency plans. Like I believe we could have won Worlds with 3 of our players injured and still only 3 left. We had contingency plans for all that. So I was a little worried that, like, what does that do to the sport if you like really just slam people? And I was so, it like warmed my heart to see, like the French, for example, were motivated. I think some of those guys immediately went back and started training. And I was like, yes, I love that effect. And same thing with some of the American teams. So I don't know. I don't know if I'd speak to that. I think a lot of people did want it, but not everyone had, like, maybe they didn't want it as bad, or they didn't have the resources, or, I mean, so I don't know.
You talked about like Stinky Leg, stuff like that. You're going to have to give us at least like one of them, explain something.
Okay.
Now, you take an old one. I know you have like 60-page document like explaining everything, with animal names and everything. I talk with people that told me that they've seen some.
For traps, we have animal names,
And it's good to have an example, but I think what's more interesting is like, what is your process into like finding this out? Like, how can teams like not copy your style, but like go back to the drawing board and be like, all right, let's go through, like, let's try this process and see what we come up with or something.
No, that's fair. And actually, the context we're operating under is, after we won Worlds undefeated with 2 teams, we just kind of reevaluated. I talked to all the players and got kind of like a retrospect for the event. And we all agreed that, hey, we nailed the mission. From here on out, we're going to be less secret. We want to raise the level of the league. We want the sport to be more exciting. So we're not going to just release the blueprints, but we'll train with other teams. Or me, like, in most cases, I don't have a horse in a lot of races. Like, if people ask me questions, I'll just answer them. But the last thing, like, I'm playing for the love. I'm having fun. But also, I want to come through for Hollywood, who relies on me. So in that way, I'm not going to just dump everything, but I'll go to some old stuff. And you brought up Stinky Leg. That was a brainchild of Rob Scheel. And actually, I built onto that something called Janky Leg. So I'll go over both of those. So I guess we have to take a couple steps back and define some things like tripwires. So when the evader is in an EQ space, you can visualize a bunch of red lasers in different spots. And those signify a moment where it trips the wire, and that's your timing and your direction. It's not that simple though. Some wires are really wide. Let's say the classic flush in the cube. Someone takes a big jump. You could go late on that, make a mistake, but still the window is so large on those tripwires that you're going to be gone. Whereas if someone slows down, they can shrink those tripwires and make them very fine, to where now you're like watching their center of mass move 2 inches to the right, and that's the tripwire. Or like maybe their head passes a bar by like 4 inches. So first of all, understanding tripwires, and also their stages, like there are different tells. There's like a whole poker game that happens. So there might be one tell that will alter your position, but you won't depart. And then another tell, and then you'll be one more step to the left. And then you were right, trip the wire, and you're in good positioning. So with all these tripwires, you can kind of see like a tripwire radius around an EQ space. Now that people, even if they don't use that same terminology, now that people understand that more and more, what we're getting is that the chaser knows that the evader knows, and the evader knows the chaser knows, and so you start to get these little games that are played. So a lot of what actually just happened in this tournament that was super exciting, and oh my God, I pulled off something I've never done before on Kai, because we had such a meta game going, because I had just trained with him for the last month, and him, me, and Kyle like knew each other so well that we had to like make some weird stuff up. But essentially what we're doing is we're trying to mess with their tripwires. We know that they have like an understanding. So things like lifting your leg, as long as you're not too committed, and this is like putting your leg into a space, is Stinky Leg. So sometimes people's tripwires are like, if they're inside, I go. But sometimes I'll just put one leg in on the bay, and they'll go, and I can throw myself out, and all I have to do is kind of lift that back leg and let it sail. So that's Stinky Leg. It happens all over the quad. And then Janky Leg is like another version of that, where it's almost like a coffee grinder on various obstacles, and it's enough to scare them, especially with cameras and crowds and pressure. It's so funny. If you just do the slightest like swing your leg over an obstacle, people will go just how you want your setup in the position. So that's Janky Leg. And to finish your answer, like how can other teams like innovate some of this stuff? Like maybe a good story would be the tiger at the cube. Other people might have different names for this in France or whatnot, but it's that position where you're crawling up the slanted bar and over. There are tons of variations of it. There's
like
fast,
Lando
there's
does,
slow.
like very slow. And
Orlando's kind of doing our version of it from 2021, or like 2020, but it's evolved quite a bit. And like I said, Michael Sliger was a big part of that, some other Apex athletes. But the way that evolved, because it started out one way with like different steps, and it turned into something totally different months later. And that process, and this is kind of how I trained Hollywood up, it's a process of science, and the better you run science, the faster your evolutions. And so, for example, if you're working with someone like a really good evader who can give you honest feedback, realistic feedback, also different evader types. You could be like, give me like
someone like
someone
Brian,
in 2020.
Someone like Kai.
Or body type or like a style type. We're starting to see, that was one thing I loved about training with Eli from APK Blue. He came in mimicking other people's styles. And it wasn't just funny, because it was, but also effective. He could use that to his advantage. I think that's another thing down the road. But if you have an evader who can give you that sort of feedback, not only with their movement, but after the fact, tell you how they felt. Like, I felt extremely threatened here, and you caused me to bump onto my heels, and I shifted my weight this way. That's when you're gonna run fast science. And so essentially, it doesn't matter what the trap is or what you're...
It's not just like playing chases on, like chase. You have to have feedback, go back to the...
Right. Yeah, some people, they think, oh, just quad time.
Yeah.
You get a quad, you're done. No, that's not it at all, actually. And actually, Apex, something people should know is Apex didn't have a mass amount of quad time. Something that should be on the record is those guys only had 3 weeks before 2021, and then we only were able to get the quad belt 3 weeks before Worlds. And the French teams had quads way longer than that. So we had to run a lot of science very quick. And another element is, like, as a coach, maybe advice for the coaches out there, part of your job is to make sure people are conducting good science. If someone is got their heads in the cloud and they're doing something that you don't see much future in it, and you can see it's not working, it's good to pull them back maybe to the fundamentals and work something else. So that tiger essentially was by disarming it. It's always an arms race. And I will say, actually, I'm glad I brought up the tiger. There was this moment I felt really bad for Christian and Damien, because maybe this was a little cocky of me to even have this thought, but I was worried that we broke that part of the quad. No. And also we didn't use it in 2021 because, again, that was collateral damage, and we didn't want the Europeans to see. So I'm so glad the Apex guys trusted me, because I could tell when I first asked them of this, they were like, I don't know. And I asked them to withhold 2 major trap techniques. and that, which is hard to do under pressure, especially like you're in the middle of a match, like, but they did it. And funny enough though, just through like the convergence of dealing with physics, we saw the French started doing it before we got to Worlds, and we're like, I see you, Naim, you're figuring it out. So yeah, that's all it is like we deal with a system of physics, we're running science, having a good coach and good training partners speeds up the science, and then you develop your own style and your own traps, and then you just keep fighting in that arms race that always happens. And that was the beautiful thing. It didn't break the sport. No. We started to find out how to disarm it. And
the arms race is going faster, like with squads, events, data, everything. Everyone's trying to get like that extra edge of like getting to that.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
We've talked like kind of techniques and strategies, mostly about the chaser side. What is your mindset, and how do you like work the evader side of the equation? Because like some of it, like the tripwires and everything, that you're gonna use it probably like both ways. Whether like fake that you go into a tripwire for the evader to fall in your trap, or read what he's doing to like not get there. Yeah. But it's like a completely different mindset and a different game even. Like,
absolutely.
Do you have? I'm not gonna ask you to divulge like any more techniques. You already did some, but like
no, it's fine. I can do old stuff. Yeah.
On the evading stuff.
On the evader side, so I will admit that this is much less developed for the teams I used to coach, and even me as a player now. And the reason that is I think, and I always used to tell the Apex guys this, first and foremost, we're a team of chasers. The points will come. And now Kyle really likes that idea too, and that's something that he's adopted as like a common thing he tells the team. And that's important, because if you get evaded, that's a double whammy. Like, and so as long as everyone is such a solid chaser that the other team can rarely ever get a point on the board, then the evasion work like will come through here and there. So on that front, even though it's less developed, what would I say? There's lots of different styles. I think the style that is emerging as the best, it just takes a lot of energy, is kind of what Kyle exemplifies, and that is, we call that the runner. We've got a runner. And early on, like, we almost didn't know how to deal with it, like, whoa, and they're just pulling late intersection after late intersection. But now we figured out how to kind of deal with it. It still is very functional. So maybe someone who's super technical, they know how to play against different styles. Because here's the thing about the tripwires, that's not done, like, you can't just learn all those and be okay.
No, yeah. It depends, it's like boxing or something, like, depending on who's coming in. Yeah. The tripwire are going to be bigger or smaller.
Exactly.
Like different heights.
Earlier, like for example, Seth Wang, he comes through the cube so fast through what we call a Viper, that if I look over my shoulder and he's even starting to lower his head, I'm already trying to exit. Whereas like, actually, I don't know if I can say this, but I just got tagged recently, I'll say that, by someone who was new to the sport, and my bad was I kind of underestimated him. I called his bluff. He poked his head through, and I was like, let's see if you can do that. And yep, you can. And that's when I caught my head on a bar, and no one knew it and thought I was being dramatic.
To some extent, like, what you're saying feels a bit like do you know soccer?
Yeah, I grew up playing soccer.
Yeah, so it's like in the 90s,
fully French.
Even before, like, the Italian team starting to be like well on the defense side, so no one would score points. And if they scored 1 point, they would just make more defender come into the pitch. And they would just kind of like lock it down. Yeah. Which comes down to like what you were saying, like right now, if you tag every time, eventually you'll get 1 point. And if you don't give 1 point, I mean, like, that's not gonna end bad for you.
Right.
But now the sport evolved in a way that we see more attackers and everything, like going back to the front of the game or something. I'm not a specialist of soccer, obviously. Yeah. But you've had like over the ages, like, different styles. Do you think like your vision is gonna evolve with time? Like, at some point, will it be more important to just like, all right, every chance we get, we need to make evasion. Yeah. Even if we just average, like a little, not as good on the chaser side. You need to be good to tag, because you don't get a chance at evading.
I see what you're saying. Like, you finite amount of time. Yeah. What do you focus on? I still think you focus on chasing. I still think you do. But what I glimpsing the future of this sport, and I'm so glad I get to be retired and just like have a glass of wine and watch these events, because I'm not going to be able to do that. But it is going to get to that point. You can't just be a good chaser. You have to have a team where everyone has a solid foundation with evading, and it's going to be super exciting to see that.
What I'm saying is, like, just to make it more clear, is instead of having 100% tag rates, is 90% tag rates good enough if you have 50% evasion rates compared to 35 or something? You know, like that balance. At what point do you start focusing more on the evading side because you're like, all right, we have enough here, and we need to fill up?
Yeah, I feel that. I feel good about that as the sport evolves. Because maybe you just won't be able to get away with it as much if you like come in, we're a team of chasers first and foremost, but if you can't score points, then you're always like down to the wire, and someone slips one through. Yeah, sure, I would agree with that.
And how much do you think your vision evolved over the past 3 years
that
you've been practicing?
So much.
And how much of that evolution is due to watching other people play versus what you've been like nerding on your side? That's a tough one.
Well, you know, I did abandon the data science approach, and because you guys have kind of taken that torch and gone really far with it. You showed me a little bit of what you did, and not to knock that, I think it has a place, but I stopped doing that because the sport started evolving so quickly that I felt like the data science was actually a red herring. And it started leading you to prepare for teams from the past.
Because there were so few events, you get information from the last event that's 6 months ago. And everyone comes in already like, what we've seen at the UK Championship, at least in Europe, that was the first time that like Fat, every time they would enter the tilted cube, they would just like,
made some noise,
you know, stomp on it. And like it triggers your brain in a way, like you feel like the person's going fast, but actually they're not going fast, and you just like they're tripping the wire. So you run away and they're just like very easy. And at that time, it wasn't easy. Like you can't just train like that just because you've seen it once.
Right.
You're still gonna fall in the trap because it's just like so fast and the noise, and you just like get overwhelmed with the information. But now I feel like much less teams fall in this trap. Everyone's expecting it. Yeah. When you're on top, you're like, I know what you're gonna do. Like.
No, some of the best evasions are people calling other people's bluffs and forcing them into the position. And I love that part of the game. That's why I often tell people that what World Chase Tag kind of feels like to me, and probably the reason it grabbed me, my background's in martial arts. And so, and also in parkour, I was very interested in how parkour fits into real life emergency situations. And I call that Parkour Randori, that project. And so World Chase Tag is almost like the range and the reading and the one-on-one, the psychology. It's got like all these elements of martial arts that I experienced a lot in BJJ and Aikikai Aikido, Muay Thai and stuff like that. And then you've got the parkour elements of just like what it's like to deal with all this precise hand and foot placement while giving your attention to other things going on, which you would be in an emergency situation. So it really grabbed me for that reason.
And actually, like you mentioned in that tournament, I remember Chase, I think it was with Matthew, where they were at the Lazy Boy, and for like 10 seconds they were just doing like micro movements, and that was so nice. Like,
no, thank you. Like that helped remind me. That's perfect. So that's like one big piece of this game. But also, you know, I also early on played a lot of chess in my like early 20s, and so I like that idea of like learning strategy. And then poker I'm not great at, but I have some experience with. And what I realized is World Chase Tag is kind of like a mix of these things, like martial arts, it's like the octagon of parkour, but then you've got these elements of poker and chess. And so the poker aspect is actually, I think, really fun because as these meta games kind of happen, it's very playful. Like, you know, you're looking for just the minute little tells, and you're also calling people's bluffs, and sometimes you call a bluff and they're very serious. And so, Matthew is really good at that. There were a few moments in this tournament that I called some people's bluffs and felt really good about just because they didn't scare me out. I was just like, I know. So, I love that element.
There's also a thing that I really like, and I feel like it's been a little bit maybe underrated right now. It's what I will call the macro game. Is that I love to, you know, talk about team on how they prepare for, you know, against another team, like which player you will send against who and for which reason, etc. And you mentioning Kai earlier because you did spend a lot of time with him. I feel like this is something really interesting that maybe teams should work on. But if they want to do this, like, do you have any advice or anything you could? Yeah,
so early on, it felt like we were one of the only teams actually doing pairings. Okay. And it's funny because back when we were doing that, I mean, we were trying to keep that all secret, but some people kind of heard through the grapevine about it. And initially that was just a no duh to me. Like, yeah, there are different types of players that do well against each other, different confidence levels, how people are feeling from, you know, maybe they took an injury or they got beat up the day before. There's like all these factors. And then what's really fun about that part of the game for a coach is that you don't just like make these pairings down the line. You've got to have scenarios for, because this is, you can play with this. Like if you know the other team has a pairing set up, you can try to mix up that pairing by getting this person off the quad with that person. They're tired and now it mixes the pairing. So you got to have like backups. And I think that's fun, and that's something that I would always contribute for the Apex guys, is that I would just spend a lot of time, like you were asking about before, watching other people move, trying to like categorize types. We have different names like Juggernaut or Scrambler, and we try to like fit them into some of those boxes or at least combinations, and then we'd match those up with people who dealt really well with those archetypes. And then of course, like, you know, a couple people out. So yeah, early on we started doing that, and I think that was absolutely essential on our path to the Worlds, because, for example, Fat was really close. I mean, I will say that was probably Apex ETH's worst match. Like, no offense to Fat, those guys are incredible. It's probably one of our worst matches, because the first half of that, I was actually thinking, what can I do right now in this situation to get these guys to stop making like beginner mistakes? I think they felt the pressure, or they psychologically are thinking of Fat in another way, but the pairings we had, I think, were critical to squeezing out that one point. And without those, Fat could have potentially pulled that from us. So,
if I give you one athlete, which kind of athlete would you put in front?
Yeah, like,
how
can you choose?
Yeah.
If I tell you like Naim from Parkour 59, for example.
As a Vader or Chaser?
As a Vader, who would you put against him? I would say as a Chaser, because he's an amazing Chaser. As Chaser, who would you?
A Chaser?
Yeah.
So Naim's a Juggernaut. And what that means is that this dude will dive on anyone, anywhere, and the tag means more to him than anything in the world.
Ask Michael Slager about this.
I'm not making fun of him. You'll see. I do some of that too in this tournament. But I mean, I feel safe. My background is parkour Kimmy. I spend a lot of time on falling. So there are times where I can give everything to a tag and I know I'm gonna be fine. And Naim looks pretty in control. Like, he actually has good break fall tech. I'm impressed.
That's amazing, because every time I'm like, oh, he's dead, and he just, you know, walk like nothing happened.
So Naim, what I put on Naim, I think, is there are two elements I'm looking for. One is someone that's very scrambly and low, because dives can be a weakness, and if you can bait those dives, then you can all you need is bait a couple dives, maybe 2 or 3, and you've got an evasion. So someone that's really quick, changes direction, kind of in the ballpark of like Jason Bergeron, but also if someone has that runner style. While I think Naim is very developed in that area, if someone's super technical, they know the tripwires really well, and they also have crazy cardio and they can put out that energy, that's another great way to bait late intersections and dives. And that's something that I try to stay away from myself. It's the weirdest thing. My first comp in 2020, I thought I was going to be very reserved, because, you know, I'm coming in there as a coach. I'm not even playing that much. It's more important to get them playtime. I do want to experience it though. In my first chase against Casey Wilson, I remember the moment that I landed in the bay, and I've never done this at this point, and I just make eye contact, and I had no control. I dove head first out the top of the bay, somehow landed on my feet, and from that moment on, I was like, oh, okay, I need to reel that in a little bit. And
that's the thing. Like, what you do in training, when you go into proper competition, like, it's not just you. It's like your whole team relies on you.
Yeah.
And you have that much. Like, we've seen so many people do things.
Yeah.
I talked with Benjamin from Kimeo. He did like a dive, I think against Apex, through the loading bay, like just landing on the loading bay and diving through and got the tag.
Like immediately.
And right after, like when I saw him a few weeks after in the gym, I was like, okay, like, show me how you did it so I can train on it. He's never done it before. He was like, I can't explain it. I don't know. I can't do it again right now. But yeah, it was just like that moment, that position that's like, I have to get it.
I think it's really important that because this does scare me a little bit when people they don't give attention to the falling technique, and they do huck those things. Like they've never done it in practice and huck it. And actually I had an experience with that in this last comp. I didn't think I'd get set up with this, and all credit to Jared Ludy. I don't know what we're calling it yet. Someone named it X-Wing, because we also, like we're saying, wing dive, Ludy dive, like whatever we end up calling it, I'll ask for Jared's blessing on X-Wing. I do like that name. But someone asked me if I had been like polishing that up. No, I've done that twice ever, and I just had this feeling, for those listening who maybe don't know, it's you get the trap at the cube, and they try to get to bay on the closed side, and most people will gate vault the bar, which is like the standard way, and it's a very effective, it still has a place. But if you want maximum reach and you don't want to miss that tag, the X-Wing or Ludy dive it's crazy how much you can just fully extend and pull the plank to your right. Your feet have to be set up a little different. Me, I am not landing on my feet. Well, not like Ludy. You should see Jared Ludy. I hope you guys get to see that soon. He not only gets the most insane reach to the tag, he lands like an aerial onto his feet.
Yeah, and it's also really fast.
Yeah, oh, it's so fast. So I got tested with that, and I had only done it twice before, and I pulled one out in this tournament. But the reason, like, I hope for people's sake, because this is a rough sport. It is absolutely, you have to respect it. If you don't, you're gonna get injured. I hope people who are hucking out there put in the effort to learn the falling techniques. Like, this is crazy. I grew up playing soccer or snowboarding. Like, we were on grass. We are diving and falling and running full speed around concrete floor, metal bars, which people can't even believe that. People at the Arnold event here thought it was plastic because they can't fathom, like, no, surely that's not metal. And you have to respect that. You have to put in the work. This is all to like budding World Chase Tag, aspiring competitors. Like, put in the work, learn your falls. You will get wrecked if you don't have that. And the best people who have like evaded natural selection are either naturally good at falling or they have a history in parkour and they've learned that stuff. So spend your time on parkour with Kimmy. That's what allows me to huck some stuff that maybe I shouldn't from time to time. But so I respect Naim. And to finish that up, that's who I'd put against Naim. I would bait those dives out because it only takes a couple. And I think the perfect person in the world for that job is probably Jason Bergeron.
How much of the strategies you developed with Apex did you bring into Hollywood?
Yeah, I told these guys from the moment I joined Hollywood, I was like, hey, I'm an open book. Like, I'm not gonna keep anything from you guys. And also, I'm not gonna come in here and insert myself into this. I wanna play for the love. That's what's important to me now, is I want to play, just be a player. It's so nice not to have the responsibility of 11 other people who are like have different physical conditions, emotional stress that they're going through. Like, I actually spent so much time making sacrifices for them that I didn't even map a lot of these ideas onto my own body, which I'm not an athlete like them. And so it's so nice to just come into a team where it's like, I get to just be a player. It feels really nice. But these guys are curious and they wanted to know, and so I'm an open book. So essentially everything that I had built out, I gave to them. And then the coolest thing, like I said, is that those guys are innovators. They're already innovating on top of it. I actually, over the last month, have had a ton of breakthroughs for myself. Again, like, I get to map my own. I'm slow. Like, I'm on the doorstep of 40. I have to have different continuums. I can't cut as quick. So I have to kind of build out my own game, and I had a lot of breakthroughs over the last month. So I'm not the same coach I was with Apex. I feel like I've evolved quite a bit, which I'm excited about.
That's great. If I ask you to show me like your playbook.
Binder?
Yeah, your binder.
Just so you know, I would never.
Would you show me your binder, or would you show me the one you had in London?
All right, I want to say this first and foremost. I would never, because Damien does, when he tells that story, he says a binder. Yeah. I would never put pencil to paper. Are you kidding me? We're living in the information era. This is all digital. Come on. I'm like, I've got so many automations I'm running. I wouldn't have a binder. Are you kidding? But yes, early on, I saw Greg out there with a clipboard, and that was funny to me because I'm sure there might be a reason for it, but it's like, in my mind, most of the coaching happens before these matches. There's so much prep, and in the match, you're just making sure you're choosing the right pairings. As the course of the match alters, you're ready to adapt, you have plans for that. Player got injured, someone's going through something emotional, like you're there to like mostly just guide what has already been planned. So seeing Greg with the clipboard made some of us laugh, and I can't take credit for this because I gotta point back to Bear again, like his brain is a beautiful mind, and so sometimes I'll just pose ideas. Like he came up with our team name for Atlanta last year, which is DTF, Dudes Tagging Fast. And so sometimes I'll just have an idea like, hey guys, I'm gonna take a clipboard out and mess with Greg, let's put some funny stuff in it. And then the group chat just blew up. Someone had gotten a hold of an image of a quad, just started drawing plays that looked really phallic. And so it was just, I like organized the order, and I got pulled out some other stuff off the internet too. And so during that match, which I'm a grown man who got scolded by Mike, the producer. He came up to me at one point and said, "No dicks on television." He was actually really mad.
I was filming this because I thought something interesting was going to happen. So I did bring my camera, and then on the comms, like everyone was shouting, like, "Don't put that on TV!" Blah blah blah. And I was like,
"That's how Christian."
I got you in trouble too. Yeah. So I mean, at first, the first play, you got one color for Chaser and one color for Vader. The first one looks ambiguous.
That's what I was gonna say. Like when you first showed it to Christian.
Yeah. So then I would do that joke to people. I sat down with Christian. And I was like, hey, if you want to see our playbook, I'm willing to like show you the first few things. Maybe we'll get deeper. And of course, he's immediately like raised an eyebrow. He's like, something like that play looks a little strange. So the next page is more obvious. And he's like, that's a, and I'm like, no, it's called the hammer.
Yeah, that's.
He's like, but. And I just like serious deadpan, like just didn't let him believe it. And then the next one even more obvious. And then I think it was Jason Bergeron, it was no drawing, it was just the colors we were using for Chaser and Vader that just wrote nice cock.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of like the punchline. But for Greg particularly, I found, this is ridiculous, I found a picture of his mom and his sister.
Where? That's the question. Where did you get it?
When he was on Ninja Warrior.
That's probably
from Ninja Warrior.
Okay.
I found a picture of his mom and sister, and then so I'm showing him some of these plays. Like, you want to see our play? I don't even care if you see our play. You can't beat us. Then at one point, I just turn it, and I'm like, Greg, and he looks over, and he's just like, you bastard.
You had one with Luke and Greg, like very close with the red lights.
I had one lined up for Richard too. Like, I don't know how that happened, but right as the red lights hit, Richard's grabbing Luke's face. Looks like they're about to go in for a kiss. And so I had that one as well, which shout out to World Based Tag. They're using that as their profile pic right now. But yeah, we were just being playful, having fun with it. It turned out really well. I'm grateful to all the Apex guys who are just like comic geniuses who made most of that stuff. Yeah.
Do you know, like we showed you a bit of the, coming back to the data and strategy side.
Yeah.
We were looking for a name at some point for the software that we are developing. And one of the first names we wanted to get was, we wanted to call it Amos, or Ask Amos. And then we're like...
He wanted to get that name.
No, we all thought it was a good game. And
you guys are like, way further than me in the data science approach now. No, you can't give me that.
And then we just went with Squared, like that's the simple name of it. But yeah, we're like, that was the first name. I just wanted to put that out.
Cheers.
What kind of, as you said, like you don't want to like only look at data, especially because now it's usually like too late, like when you get it. And everything, but what kind of data would you need if it was relevant, like up to date and everything? What kind of thing would you need?
Are you gonna use this?
Yeah, of course we're gonna use this. Are we gonna just cut it out?
This interview is not even gonna show.
Yeah, no, that's just research. That's just market research.
It's gonna be like, okay.
Yeah, what data? I haven't thought about that for a little while. I would like to point out, I like some of the stuff that you guys are doing. For example, because I love systems where you can learn. I run a bunch of metrics on myself for like optimal health, and I love systems where you can just like flick a switch and see without all these automations, without doing additional work. So for example, heat maps on where people get tagged. Another weakness of data right now is there's not enough.
Yeah.
And so sometimes that's a red herring. But I did like what you showed me, and that is heat maps on where people are getting tagged, for example, or you could even get even more granular and like talk about certain trap types, how many times they run them, and really figure people out. One thing that I had someone back in Denver building for me is like kind of a flow chart on movement on the quad as evaders, so you could kind of get a sense for the highest probability of direction that people lean towards. But the heat map was cool because you can now filter for a team, or filter for a particular player, or filter for a player during a certain set of years. Like that stuff to me is really cool.
Or against another player.
Or a particular player. I love that stuff with like filtering. Like
when we recorded data, we recorded like all the chases, every player, like the time obviously, where they got tagged, where the evader started on the quad, but also like kind of the global strategy that the chaser was using. Like, was he tailing? Was he doing center? Like the main ones, you know, like the basic ones. We recorded like if people use the high road.
Right.
We recorded if someone fell on the quad and where they fell and everything. So once we put everything together, as you said, some of it is old, some of it like on some chaser you would open it and have like 5 chases. So it's not enough to really like know anything about someone. But
to be honest, I don't want to give too much because I have a lot of ideas of what we could record and.
Oh, you're not going to give too much
after you gave.
That's different for different reasons. But what I would love to do is actually have the path of both the chaser and the evader
we want like
doing the whole
chase. Someone see like preferred routes
so that we could see like everywhere
and then what
they
if
go.
it actually does come out phallic? Mind blowing.
I mean that's gonna be the new challenge. Like you need to make an evasion
do that on the quad,
doing
like,
a dick.
It's gonna be like they're recording
running from the starter plate around Lazy Boy through the mountain around the ridge.
That's the meta right there. You're like, why did he make that cut under the front line and then go back out? Like, that's the meta.
If you had to go against like Apex ETH at their strongest, at their peak.
Oh yeah, that's good.
I'm not saying that I don't know where they are right now, but
but don't take any players from Apex.
Okay, that's a good challenge. Fair enough.
I feel like it's more interesting.
That makes it pretty hard though. Okay, no Apex ETH players. All right, first loophole is Jared Ludy is not Apex ETH. And I believe Jared Ludy presently at this moment is the best in the world. And that's mainly because Jason Bergeron is semi-retired and potentially injured for the near future. So definitely Jared Ludy, he's also hungry, he's innovating, he's evolving fast. Kyle is similar, and what a real big treat was I did get Kyle to come out to train on a quad for a little bit, and one of the best treats was Ludy came out too. And I got to watch those two go over and over again against each other, and it was so wild.
I did film some of these chases, and I was like, look at that, that's so cool.
Yeah, and oh my God, that was good. So Kyle also is hungry. He's a specimen. Like, I don't understand. He will not give up. And some of the things he dodged out there in some of the practice, I mean, even in this comp, like, it is truly incredible. Like, at first, the first year in 2020, I felt like it might have been a little fluke. I wasn't totally on board, but no, I see it now. He's an incredible athlete. He's hungry. He's innovating. He's digesting all this stuff, and he's become a weapon now. So,
which player do you think is currently so underrated? Basically, who should we grab and bring into our team?
Well, that was Kai Baldwin, because I had a really funny moment where Damien DeVoe, I don't know how it came up, but he just said, "Who's Kai?" And I was like, that's the last time you're ever going to say that. So he was underrated, but not so much anymore. Who's underrated now? I think Elijah from APK Blue is a little underrated. I don't think people really know what he's capable of. People will start to see that. Yeah, he'd be my pick, Elijah.
I kept the best for last, because that's what's going to be like the clickbait thing we're going to use on Instagram and everything.
Okay.
Why did you leave Apex?
That is some clickbait.
Not just the team, but the gym as well.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Okay, that is clickbaity. Good job. Good job. All right. So, as far as like leaving the company, the last 6 years have been super hard on us. I don't know that many people know some of the details, but we had our landlords terminate our lease early and unlawfully back in like 2017, and we were balling out. We were, you know, the gold standard in coaching and gym design. We were crushing. We were sitting on a huge stack of savings. We were about to buy land and build a gym from the ground up. Like, things were going really well. I'm really happy. Shout out to my brother and Ryan Ford and all the people that were a part of that helped build us to that point. But that was a huge blow. We couldn't find a good space. And we ended up going into debt, and then COVID hit shortly after, and we had no runway. And so we went from doing really well in life to losing everything and being super in debt, and it was hard on a lot of people. And we just, you know, we kind of, between Ryan and myself, we just had different ideas of where we wanted to go from there. And so, yeah, it's no bad vibes. I feel good about the situation. I have a lot of other aspirations that I wanted to move on to. And so, yeah, it feels good. Just recently, that's all set. And so I moved on. That's actually, you know, mostly, it's not connected to the team thing. But if I were to sum it up, after Worlds, when the mission was complete, it was really important to me not to have this rely, like the Colorado WCT. I didn't want it to rely on me. And I wanted to see it be sustainable without me. And there were some other reasons as well regarding Apex HQ and such. But I asked Rob and Devin if they wanted to lead those teams. And I passed the torch on to them, and I was going to guide them and kind of help them grow as leaders and give my professional advice along the way. And I did want to play. You know, there are some complexities around that, but ultimately Rob didn't see me as top 6, and I respect that decision. And there was no bad blood about me playing for someone else. It was really as simple as I really want to play. Like I've put in my work, like sacrificing. Now I want to have some fun and just like focus on myself. And so there was no bad blood around it, just simply I'm tight with Paul Darnell. And he actually hit me up and he's like, hey, we don't have a 6, we just had an injury. And I was like, all right, let's blast people's peripheral vision with neon pink, let's do this. Thank you guys. Thank you guys, it was a pleasure.
Subscribe, like, send us some money. Subscribe to my own